To everyone in the chat, make sure you get involved in the comment section, leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you've got any questions for James, we will try to get into him towards the end, but like I said, we've got a lot of stuff to discuss. So, Sam, do you want to kick things off with the Onana? And actually,
can
before
you kick it
kick
off?
things off,
you kick it off. I'm just having a problem. I'm muted apparently, so just,
yeah,
you guys carry
absolutely
on.
Fine. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this sound first and foremost. Yeah, James, obviously we've had the recent update from Fabrizio saying United are now closing in on Andre Onana deal as verbal proposals been made during talks today. Understand it's 50 million euros fee plus 5 million euros add-ons, structure of add-ons being discussed, and then done deal. It's imminent as expected. What's your kind of reaction to this deal? Do you have a kind of, I know we're speaking a little bit off the chat, like, do you have a timeline for this? What are the add-ons? Any kind of ridiculous add-ons in there? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Definitely good. You know, it's kind of been a long, well, it hasn't actually been that long as far as United deals go. This is probably one of the quicker ones.
Yeah, I suppose.
You know, overall, I mean, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, it started to become very much like, oh yeah, there's actually a deal for Onana that could be done here. They've been looking for a keeper all year, but you know, it's close. It's close, and I'm loath to put a time on it because, you know, last week when it was also close and there was a lot of talk coming out in the media, I was told from sources around United that it was not that close, and you know, that it wasn't really that close, that they were pushing, you know, United forward, that there was a lot of pressure being put on them, as we've seen with Chelsea and things like that. You know, it's a balance this summer of United and Murtaugh and the people involved trying to change the way things have been being done for years, which is true, and they are, and they're working on it, and they've continued to work on it. I think they got a good deal amount in the end, you know, walking away, Chelsea reopening talks, you know, getting a good deal that has these add-ons that are essentially if United are winning the Premier League and things like that. And I think that's pretty much exactly the kind of pattern or format you're seeing with the Onana deal. And they've been moving closer and closer. And sometimes when you read in the media, you think like real close. Oh, why is it taking more days? It's crashing, and it's like these huge waves when it's actually just a pretty standard progression on a deal moving forward. And sometimes it gets reported on every tiny step of the way, and sometimes it doesn't. And in this case, you know, it's been reported on kind of almost every tiny step of the way. They're real close on that guaranteed fee. United's goal at the end of the day, very clearly, from what I understand, was to get the deal around 50 million euros. That's what they wanted. And 45 plus some add-ons, 50, somewhere in there, but they didn't want to go with that 50 plus 5 add-ons that was being proposed or tabled by Inter last week, where those 5 add-ons were basically just like appearances. It's a guaranteed 5. It's really a 55 million deal. It's going to happen unless the guy like doesn't play for the next 3 years. So that's kind of where it's at now. They're closer on that fee, on that guaranteed fee. We'll see where it ends up because sometimes it changes a little bit in the final stage too. But certainly no higher than 50 would be expected. And those add-ons are going to be similar to, I would say, to Mount for sure, where it's going to be like, you know, no idea. No idea that these are ever going to happen. If they do, it means United are winning everything, and that's fine. And then the extra 5 million is worth it. So Inter will say 55, and United will say we got a keeper for 42 million pounds. You know, use the lower number share, the lower number dollar conversion type of thing, and you know, and it looks good for everybody. And so that's probably where it's at. But those add-ons, you know, I think everybody involved wants the deal to be done, and that's what's been true since last week. Everybody wants the deal to be done. Onana and both sides want the deal to be done, but obviously, you know, he returned to Inter as scheduled on the 13th today. So you know, nobody's going crazy here. It's just they all want the deal to be done. They've all agreed to do it, and it's just a matter of coming to terms on that. And you know, when the relationship is good and when United get to this point in talks, it pretty much always happens. You just don't want to get hung up in the when of it and just wait for it.
No, of course not. I think if you would have said to most people Mason Mount and Andre Onana for pretty much what is basically £100 million, I would have snapped your fingers off for it, basically. Yeah, absolutely.
And pretty much in by preseason. I mean, I know that we've had our first game, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but a keeper's a keeper. And I know that you got to, I mean, Tom Heaton was playing like you're going to see Andre Onana play, when he comes in. And obviously very, very familiar with Ten Hag. So the transition time is going to be
Should be.
low, I think.
Yeah, should be good. Should be good. Sam, are you good to go?
Yes, all
Okay.
good. I can see my audio being registered. It's all good. I saw a couple of reports recently about Ten Hag saying Dean Henderson could possibly stay at number one if they do not get a goalkeeper in. Me personally, I think it's a bit of posturing for United just to put the pressure on into saying, well, we can carry on with this guy even if you're not willing to. If that did happen, how does that affect United going forward tactically? Because obviously Dean Henderson, he's better than De Gea in certain aspects, but he's obviously not the sweeper keeper and the kind of dynamic guy that Onana is. And do you think that is just posturing from United, or do you think there's a little bit of truth to it?
It's a bit of, I mean, it is a bit of both, right? The truth is somewhere in the middle. If they're not going to pay any asking price for Onana, right? Like they're just not gonna. That much is true. And so you have to consider the possible scenario of, well, yeah, what if they did fail to get a deal with Onana and Inter say, no, we're not going to do it. It's 60 million euros plus flat. And United just say, we can't afford this. We can't pay for this right now. Then what happens? Then probably Dean Henderson will be in that lineup to play in that case. And I don't think he would refuse to, even though he very, very strongly wants to leave United and go back to Forest. If it was like, look, it's all pretty fluid in this regard, but it is something I think they've been looking at. It is a possibility. If Onana didn't happen, which it very, very much likely will, then Ten Hag would go to Dean Henderson. He's obviously seeing him every day. The guy's been at Carrington for weeks now. He came back before July. He came back early to complete his rehab and all of that. He's been around everybody. It's a simple conversation of, look, we need you to be the number one goalkeeper at Manchester United. It's not a bad deal. You might offer him a bumper contract or something like that too, frankly, to increase incentives. There's always ways around people thinking, oh, I don't want to be, I don't want to do this, or I want to go, or something like that. And money usually smooths over a lot of problems. But that way, I think it's a possibility, and it's an improvement over De Gea for sure. And I think then you would see them buying still a second keeper, like that Suzuki fella that we've been linked to, is still a potential name even now, of course, for that. But they would do something like that. So I would say it's like a 5% possibility that's diminishing every minute in time, because obviously it's like the most clear as day transfer that Dean Henderson is being sold the moment that Andre Onana has agreed. We can all see that.
We was joking off camera, weren't we? Tom Heaton, when he came into that first pre, ready, what's this sweeping business? What should we do? 18-yard box, I'm on it. Don't worry about it. But it's so evident we need a goalkeeper, and I hope that deal kind of moves quickly. Speaking about the game yesterday, though, Sam, I didn't know if you wanted to go into this first, or you want me to kind of go into it.
Yeah.
I know you had.
I'll jump into it. Mason Mount's first appearance in United shirt. I think we're all a little bit excited. I mean, I was excited about other youth players, but we'll get into them sort of in the next question. But yeah, what was your thoughts on his performance? Obviously, he only had 45 minutes. Do you think that's a sort of example of how we're going to play? We had Kobe Mainu, who I thought did fantastically well, almost in the sixth position. I didn't know he could do that, but apparently he's very good at it. And then you had the sort of 2-8s in Hannibal and Mason Mount. Do you think that's the way United are going forward? That's how we're going to play and set up? And yeah, what were your thoughts on Mason Mount's sort of first appearance?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was good to kind of confirm that we're not crazy when we were looking at, like, United have been pursuing this kind of attacking 8 thing for a while, because it was clear as day the system, right? And it's not like it's so rigid, like Mount never came deeper to support or anything like that, because of course he's gonna, any midfielder will. What's funny is last preseason we played the same system. Fred played the deep pivot because we had no options, right? Fred played the deep pivot with Eriksen and Bruno playing high. That was the only choice we had. And it actually was great in preseason. Obviously, once the season actually kicked off, things kind of fell apart with that. It didn't quite work so well at game speed. But that was the idea back then as well, right? And it's been a lot of pragmatic changing from Ten Hag through the season. But then I did feel like, and from seeing and understanding who we were targeting over the last few months with the likes of McAllister, Mount, the profile of this attacking 8 who is not incompetent at playing a bit more in a box-to-box role, who's not incompetent at coming deeper and supporting, the deeper midfielder, it became pretty clear. But of course, a big part of that is the keeper too. The keeper being willing to come up high because you're playing with basically a back 3 and the one pivot. But the system was good. The system was clear. I think it's exactly how we're going to play. Bruno Fernandes would be playing, of course, in the where Hannibal was playing there, next to Mount. And I like it. I mean, there's so many attacking angles and so many directions and a really nice build-up, a really nice interplay for players who probably haven't played together that much at all, and a very short preseason. It was encouraging to see the signs of that system. And I think from Mount, we pretty much got what we expected. I mean, you can see what he does, which is, like I've been saying for all year, like get a better Fred in, and he's kind of like a composed, consistent type of player in the same vein as Fred, but composed and consistent. So you kind of, the decisions are a little less rash. There's a little less rushing. It's a little more under control. And I say a little, in some cases a lot, but under control. But the pressing was there. The energy was there. The pressing was actually fantastic, and ball winning was really good. And so, you want to see exactly that and build upon it. But I think he's the type of player we need in the midfield that we haven't had. Someone who's going to give you a 7 out of 10 every game, basically. And with occasion, have a much better one. I mean, how many years now have we been kind of boom and bust in the midfield? I mean, with Pogba, with the injuries, with Matic, with health. When's the last time we had midfielders that were just like
Carrick?
You know what you're getting every game. Yeah, Carrick, exactly.
Just consistent in general.
Yeah, boring Carrick, right? No,
yeah.
But like it was. But that's what you want. You look at it like there was many times Carrick wasn't viewed as the best player, at United or some like amazing midfielder. When you look back on it, you're like,
criminally
that's
in
the
the
guy
rage.
that made so much happen all the time, just consistent. You know what you're getting every game, and it's the type of move that I think is the right kind of football move. That's not something that's just the big hype and the big name that we're used to seeing all the time.
Yeah, you can see the core.
Sorry,
go on.
Just got a couple of super chats. I just wanted to
go
read
for it.
before we Rush Mainu, will we ever get rid of Mick Average? It's time to cash in. So
well, it's kind of already happening, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. And then Dan Raj, James is a top guy, no rumours but all truth. And then I think Dan had another one. Onana equals Hendo for 25-30 million plus the Hayes wage plus youth sale. So yeah, there's a couple of super chats there. But sorry, Nick.
No, thank you very much for that. I absolutely agree with your comments on Mason Mount. I could see what Ten Hag wants to bring in the core principles of how he plays. The attacking, it's interesting how I was going to develop, and now that kind of develops in away games as well, in the big European nights. I think that's what I want to see on the biggest stages of them all in the Champions League, and I think he could really live up to that, of course, which he's done with Chelsea before. But I thought some of the youngsters in particular were really impressive. Again, we were saying off camera before as well. Alvaro Fernandez, Kobe Mainu, Ahmad looked fantastic. I'm a huge fan of Ahmad myself. I thought he had a fantastic performance. Who in particular stood out for you, and why?
Yeah, I mean, it's very funny because pretty much all those names you mentioned were great. For me, the standout performers were Kobe Mainu, Hannibal Mejbri, Mason Mount, Alvaro, and Ahmad, and those five were just all really good. I mean, they were really, really good. Kobe showed obviously some. I think one of the greatest traits he has already at such a young age is you can see how calm he is and aware of space. And, aside from qualities on ball, things like that always improve over time, you can see he always knows where he is. He always knows what he's doing. He always knows what's around him. And, he reacts to it well. And I understand the level of competition isn't that high, except even if you view Leeds as it's a championship side, well, that's pretty good when you're seeing 17-year-olds who come up against them and don't just look not out of place, but look exceptional in comparison to the opponent. That's a good sign. Alvaro Fernandez, he didn't get as much mention, but really, really crisp passing, really strong in his movements, very, very a solid player, and he's been very impressive at the youth level as well.
Yeah, Preston, right? He was playing at.
And then Ahmad, who coming off that great season at Sunderland, he looks faster. He looks quicker. You know, he was like a little bit even. Not that he's slow, but when I saw him last in United, he seemed, you know, he's a small guy, so you kind of need him to be quick.
Yes.
And he didn't seem particularly that quick, even though he's a bit bigger now and a bit
No, I
stronger.
agree.
Now he looks fast. He looks much quicker, much faster. The final ball is the thing he's still kind of like working on, but you know, some of that just comes with time. But the movements, the space, the awareness, a lot of the things that go into it were there. For me, I'm a huge fan of Hannibal Mejbri. I thought, you know, we had like this crop of youth players come through that, as outside of one, didn't work out, and then some incidents happened around that other one, and now it hasn't worked out. But there was a time years ago when, you know, you had this youth of Chong, Greenwood, Gomez, and Garner come through, and it was looking like a very exciting time.
Yep.
And it didn't really go anywhere, aside from with Greenwood, and we all know what's going on with that. But there was a lot of not great United Academy years, frankly. Haven't really produced much in the recent years, you know, really since you know, Rashford and such till recently. And one of the things that I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer did well when he came in was he did help put a focus back on investment in the youth area of the team. And it really started there with, you know, Hannibal Mejbri was a big purchase in 2019, 4 years ago now, for 10 million euros, a big youth purchase. They were chasing Ryan Cherky at the same time, I think, and didn't get him in, but got, you know, Hannibal Mejbri in. And you can see the talent pool building now since then. Like that was the starter of it, these players coming in the youth side. And Hannibal's not really, had kind of suffered from being too good for the under 23s to a large degree, but United not really sorting out good loans for a lot of players. Like for years and years, we had no good loans for anybody. And he finally went on loan, and it still wasn't that great of a loan to Birmingham City, which is not exactly the right fit for him at all for the way he plays and what they need and all of that. And so people look at it and say, you know, there's nothing in this player based on that. But as you see with someone like Ahmad, went to Rangers, didn't have much in there, goes to Sunderland, the right fit, and just completely blows up. And that's what it's about, is the right environments. And I think what you see from Hannibal in that game is one of the things I admire, because I've watched most of his games as a youth player, and when he went on loan when I could. Huge amount of hunger and desire there. Like the effort levels, the tracking back, he's physical, he's not out of place in the senior game, and has a lot of vision, the passing, the movement. He can do something with it, and he's going to be a successful footballer, but he needs the right environment as well. And I think that with him, the reason I'm focusing on him is I think the clock's nearly up there in terms of United, in terms of his time at United. Like he's going to have to get a chance or get a really solid environment to play in to really show that, or it will be time for him to move on somewhere else where he will be successful. I'm sure of that, but I hope it's at United as well.
I hope they keep hold of Ahmad, because I think he can provide perfect competition for Antony, especially off the back of the season at Sunderland. Completely. I think he's looked fantastic, honestly, I really do. Sam, we're going to discuss the outgoings, right? Elanga, a couple of... surprised me not the fee, but I can't hear you, by the way, if you're speaking, Sam.
Sorry, I muted myself because I was typing.
All right. Yeah, just the Elanga fee, of course. I thought £8-10 million or something along the lines of that. And then they're talking about 15-20 million for Everton. I was like, what the fuck's going on here? But yeah, that was something we wanted to discuss, wasn't it? The outgoings.
Forest are involved as well, I believe. Right? They're making a bid. So make a bidding more, man. Push the price up. Yeah. Let's go. Let's get some cash.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say... Oh, go on, please.
No. Yeah, go for it. Keep going.
Like on that... Did you want to ask your question, actually? Because that fits in with the Elanga thing.
Oh, yeah. So are there any movements at all on outgoings about players we haven't seen much on? I know we've heard stuff about Henderson and Elanga, but is anything you've heard outside of that kind of spectrum at all?
Yeah, a little bit. Obviously Elanga being the main one that's in the names right now in terms of advancing on talks outside of Henderson, because they're two kind of in demands. But so there's a lot of other players. And for first touch on Fred and Donny van de Beek, because they're two players who are obviously not currently, who didn't travel with the first team, right? Maybe Fred traveled, but they weren't there at the game. And then there was a story from Larry Whitwell about they were offered to Atalanta as part of the deal for Rasmus Højlund. And from what I understand about Fred's situation, Fulham are interested, but the fee is kind of an issue. Fred's a useful player to have, but you want to get good value for him. You don't want to sell him for £8 million because you're not going to get a replacement of requisite quality for that much money. And it's not going to do enough for you that it's worth not having him as a resource to come off the bench. You know, they're ready to move him on in large respect as well due to his demands because he could play somewhere. Fred is a player who could play somewhere, who could start somewhere week in and week out. And he's moved down the charts. I'm not saying like, you know, at Man City or something, but there's plenty of teams he would be a regular starter at that with the qualities and work rate and things that he has and his pressing ability and all of that. But you don't want to just give him away for nothing. And that's where United are faced with. There's not a lot of offers for a requisite fee. And so can we use him as a make weight to get something else done? Donny Van de Beek, they're going to struggle. They're going to look to loan him to Italy somewhere. And
I don't think we'll get a fee for Donny.
And then maybe get an option in there, but likely he's going to have to prove it because his loan to Everton didn't go well, ended up injured. It's been a mess. It's 3 years, nothing. 3 years of nothing is practically not a pro footballer at this point. I don't mean that as an insult, but like in terms of actually getting on the pitch and playing, there's no career here. And so the value is not there at all. And he's gonna have to get going somewhere for United to get a fee for him. But I did find it interesting that they were offering both for a forward, and I think that to me it's an implication, as just touching on the youth thing, that they're going to want to keep some of these young players around to fill out the bottom of the chart instead of having a senior player get 200, 600 minutes, something like that. Have some youth players actually get some time.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, we joke about on the channel, don't we, about Donny? He's just like, he's handing out bibs, he's setting the cones out and stuff like that. Yeah, poor lad, man.
I feel so bad for him.
It's a tough situation. There's no doubt about that.
Just on the sort of outgoings, obviously we've got a limited budget on what's been reported to be a limited budget, something 100, 120 million. And we've spent how much? We spent 55 on Mount. Could be 60.
We're about to hit 100 between.
About to hit 100, so that leaves us with like 20 at best, which not much for a striker, like in any sort of level. How much do you think United are looking at realistically getting into via sales? Obviously, we got Lango on the thing. We have Henderson, Fred possibly, Donny probably not. And then there's probably a couple of others dotted around. How much do you think United are looking at realistically getting into the pot, and how much do you think that then goes on to the buying sort of cash pile that we can then go out and get a striker or an Amrabat or something like that?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. Obviously these the fees are amortized, right? So in terms of budget, it's always a little confusing how that's all going to tie together in terms of what the fee is and how the sales are going to tap into it, because let's say they sell Elanga for 10 million, right? Just to try to briefly kind of explain this, if they sell Elanga for 10 million, it's a 10 million profit in this year. That's it. You get 10 million profit. It doesn't mean we get paid all that cash now. That's not a huge deal, but you get 10 million in profit. So how much does that add to the budget? Does it add 10 million? Yes and no, because in effect, if you go buy a 50 million player with that, you're only taking a 10 million hit on the books this year, right? In terms of what you're actually losing on a profit and loss. So if the reason is for FFP, we can't show a loss, well, you're getting a 10 million sale and a 10 million purchase if you're buying a 50 million player. So it's always hard to know, but of course then in next year, you're not getting that 10 million sale, so it's just going to be a hit. So they're looking at multiple year kind of models to figure out how this averages. But a 10 million sale is worth more than a 10 million purchase. Let's just put it that way, right? Like that is a fact of it for a youth player. So they've got, Ethan Laird, Zidane Iqbal, they've raised a 1.5 million there. Tahith Chong going for, massive amounts. Tahith Chong going for between 5 and 10, something like that. They've got a good sell on there. There's another 2 million maybe, 1 to 2 million there. So they're getting up there, 3 million, 4 million in profit.
Just another 20 to do.
Something.
Yeah,
just a bit more to go. But if they can move Henderson for around 25 million, which I think they could do, if they can move Elanga, which I think in the end will be around 10 to 12 plus add-ons, but let's say 10 to 12 for the sake of things now, then you've got about 35, to 40 million in sales to add on to this, which brings you up, maybe if you're looking at it in a real simplistic way, maybe to that 60 million mark, which hopefully is enough for someone like Rasmus Højlund, because that 85 number is absurd and it's just not happening. If it's more
Fucking
than
outrageous.
60, it's just not going to happen. If it's more than 50, I'd argue it's just not going to happen in terms of pounds. You know, if you're going up to the 60, 65, 70 million pound range, why not be going for someone like Gonzalo Ramos, who's already a proven striker, who's scored 25 goals, who's, you know, won the league? Like, this is a way better deal, and it's basically the same age. And it's it's much more value for money going that direction if you're getting up to those fees. It's just not going to happen. Don't do it. You know, at that point, buy anybody else and sign Harry Kane next year for free, or Victor Osimhen for whatever next year.
Just on that, isn't the negotiator in this Atlanta deal for Rasmus, isn't the same negotiator as the one who did the Maguire deal? I was reading into that before.
Yeah, so it's the Leicester director, whatever it was at the time for the Maguire one. So, you know, trying to rinse us, maybe, you know,
again,
might be what it is. Again.
At least we haven't got Ed Woodward in charge doing deals, because we would have paid 75 million for Højlund at this point. Absolute useless prick he was.
Yeah. We're not going to do it. I mean, we're not going to do it at that price. It's just not going to happen. And so it's like, it's just not going to happen. It's going to have to come way down. And if it does, then sales of Dean Henderson, sales of Anthony Elanga will, plus what we've got, probably is enough to get it done. Then there's, you know, but then there's the factors of a couple things that do need to happen. Players who were gone need to get gone again, like Bailly, Telles, etc., because if those wages are coming back into the fold, that's problematic too. That's going to cause problems for United as well. So, you know, those have to go to lower the wage bill back to where it should be in order to add on from this. So it's all kind of coming together, and it's difficult because I think Telles will go back to Portugal. I think there's some interest there, and I think something could happen. Eric Bailly, I have no idea, because the incapability of him to stay healthy, I don't even know who wants to take a risk.
Just retire. Really,
what's the point? You know, it's like
he's a risky player in general as well. Just like not even just injuries, just like the way he's
players.
His natural style is like it's a very big risk.
Injuries, like
nightmare to have. Like,
I mean, it was not that tough. That the option that was there that would have had him see a permanent transfer on the loan he was on, or the obligation rather.
Yeah.
The requirements for that were not that tough. He only had to play like a certain percentage of games and and he couldn't pull it off because he couldn't do that. He couldn't stay healthy and he couldn't avoid red cards and all that. So.
Didn't he? He flying kicked a player in the chest, didn't he?
Yeah,
and just was banned for 8 games. So I was like, well, that's over then. That option's gone.
That's it then. Yeah, he's coming back. At least they knew by March because of the ban. Like, oh, Bailly's coming back. All right, we're gonna have to start figuring this out now.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah. Absolutely. I don't know if they'll let him train with the team after some of the things that have been mentioned.
On your own, over there, away from everybody.
I was joking this morning. I was saying, you're seeing some of these deals that are happening now. Jordan Henderson, by the way, for 700 grand a week. Like, what on earth, is going on with this planet? I mean, Fabinho, 40 million pounds. He's on the decline now. Why is he no kind of? It sounds stupid, but why is Saudi not coming in for any of our players? Like, they know we've got Maguire for sale, or McTominay, or Fred, or because I haven't seen any concrete links aside from the fact of just Fred, right? Who's kind of like sparked a bit of interest in Saudi.
Yeah, well, I've been thinking about that too, and there's a couple of explanations for it. Like when you look at the players, the profile of the players and things like that. I mean, one, you know, would Jordan Henderson be going over if Steven Gerrard hadn't gone over? I don't know. I don't know that he would. I don't think that was going to happen otherwise. So the players they're bringing in, a lot of them are obviously older players on the back end of their careers who are global stars, especially in European competitions. And I think that's the kind of almost the missing key for a lot of these older players. You know, the Benzemas, these guys are European stars, like across Europe, successful Champions League players. And then, you know, you get the random one where it's like Ruben Neves, but he's he's younger, and it's like rare to see players who'd be willing to go make that move, who are younger. So they've probably approached a lot of younger players about that who are just like flat, no, I'm staying in Europe. But, you know,
a couple of Italian players out here. Brozovic has gone. There's another guy. Are you interested? Milinkovic Savic. He's gone as well, I believe. So
the ever present Milinkovic Savic, who nobody is sure actually exists if you're a United fan.
Turns out we're not going to sign him.
Oh. Turns out we're not signing him. He's not coming. But
have they got Wesley Sneijder as well, or Gaetan by any chance?
Yeah, exactly. And so for United, I think the problem with United players, frankly, is like Harry Maguire is not an attraction for Saudi for what they're trying to accomplish. Is he at this point in time?
And Henderson is.
John Henderson.
That's crazy, right? Champions League winner, Premier League winner.
I get it.
You know, under Klopp, you know, give it a couple years, they'll probably be coming all over, you know, for United players next season. You know, we were in Europa last year, you know. True. And that's the difference for a lot of the names, is just the global appeal of the United players has pretty well diminished for quite a while. And, you know, Ronaldo being the one, because of course he's Ronaldo, you know. But otherwise, what have you got? I mean, it's not to insult them, you know. Rafael Varane, I wouldn't be surprised if they had approached for Rafael Varane, but that doesn't mean there's any interest on both sides in anything happening.
Fits the kind of 30-plus French demographic, doesn't it? Kante, Benzema, these kind of guys. So, I tend to agree with that. Sam, do we want to ask the questions about takeover?
Oh, God.
Do we go into it?
Do we have to talk about the takeover?
We've covered so many angles. I'm running out of angles to cover, but
I don't care anymore. Like at this point, I'm just like, sell it, don't sell it, just fucking make a decision.
Before you do, please, everyone who's currently watching right now, keep getting your questions in. We'll try and get into a couple of them towards the end. Hit that subscribe button and smash the like on the video. Let's go for it, Sam.
Yeah, there's 400 people in the chat. Appreciate all the support.
Yes, sir.
I imagine most of you are here for James, not us, but we appreciate it anyway. So
we want James.
Just so Jim, I don't know if you saw it. So Jim Radcliffe did an interview with a local newspaper. I think he was mostly promoting a book that he wrote, but he did sort of comment on a couple of things about the takeover. Obviously, they're under NDA, so he didn't say too much. He regarded himself as still in it, and they'd had positive conversations, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. A lot of people read into this, including myself when I first read it, but since I've read it, I've changed my mind a little bit. When I first read it, it sounded like a man who sort of knew he lost, but he was trying to put a face on it to say, oh no, we're still in it, because nobody's heard anything, and he was trying to just sort of keep his sort of name out there. But then other people have said, well, he's under an NDA, he can't really say much, so I wouldn't read too much into it and stuff like that. So what were your thoughts on the sort of comments that he did make during the sort of interview? And then also the possible legal issues that are overhanging if he did come in. I know a lot of sort of minor stake shareholders are threatening to sue or threatening legal action because they miss out on a significant amount of money should the sale go through to Sir Jim, because he would buy out just the majority of the Glazers and leave 2 on, and then the rest of them would be left out of a potential sort of sale and share buying. Just, what are your thoughts on those two things?
Yeah, so, you know, obviously the process itself is extremely complex when you get down into a lot of these legal matters and things like that. And whether there's any weight to the legal challenges is very debatable, but it doesn't really matter. They're being mentioned, they're being brought up. You know, I kind of bring things down to myself most of the time when you're dealing with anything with United into almost, you just break it down to Occam's razor, the simplest explanation. And the simplest explanation under the Glazer ownership of Manchester United is when something is taking a long time, it's because the Glazers are making it take a long time. And there's not really, exactly that. They're trying to decide what is going to be the best thing for them. The Glazers will make the decision based on what is the best thing for them, based on the advice that they're given and the information that they're given. And that's it. At the end of the day, they're gonna make the decision on their own self-interests. And if things have not moved, it is simply, it simply comes down to they have not made the decision on how to make it move. Just my perspective on most of these things in business is that when something is not happening, it really does come down to the simplicity of someone doesn't want it to happen. And if they want it to happen, it'll happen. And if they don't want it to happen, it won't happen. And there'll be all sorts of reasons and things brought up. And you see it with transfers because it goes the same way. And it's what I've tried to point out to people about. They get caught up in the details sometimes and things like that, or they get bogged down into the conspiracy theories. And, I know it's funny because a platform, I think I've mentioned this even on your channel before about a platform starting on this like ITK type stuff, except what you find out at the end of the day is it's not nearly as, smoke and mirrors as people have you believe when you follow people who pretend to be insiders. If the deal isn't announced as agreed, you know why? It's because it's not agreed. There's no conspiracy. There's no major complications. When something like this is done, it will be done. And it will be out there and it will get to people. And there's no reason to hold back on all of that. And so, in terms of Jim Ratcliffe, there's a lot of ways you could read into his comments one way or another, right? But the simplest explanation is the way I took it is they're deciding whether or not to even sell the club in the first place. When he says we put a good offer there, but I can't force them to sell, to me, like, it's just, are they going to sell? Are they not? Are they going to give me the green light to move forward, or are they not? And that doesn't mean necessarily even with him, are they giving the green light or not? He just doesn't know at that point in time because it's not 100% decided. Obviously can't get into much details beyond that. He couldn't be in public. One comment I would say that's different to what he said before is one time before he talked about the dumb money for football clubs. And in this conversation, it was a little bit more like they don't make them anymore. And that's a bit of a shift in attitude towards like, maybe he is willing to pay whatever it takes to get the things done. That was my takeaway from it is actually a bit more of a positive attitude towards wanting to buy the thing. But at the end of the day, I think the only thing I would take from the comments, and this is the difficulty of the whole thing, is that it hasn't been totally decided by the Glazers. And until it has, there's going to be delays. There's going to be stalls. There's going to be another reason, another this, and all this kind of stuff is going to come up. And it is the difficulty of all 6 of the siblings being put together. And it could even be, I know we've had different reports. There's a guy, Daniel Harris, who reported one thing about, how Ineos think they've won and they're working on details and legal things and all that. Could be true. Could be they're doing that. And it's still not agreed by the Glazers entirely to sign, but they want to figure it all out in case that is what happens. That might well be the case. And there's so many ways to go about it, but when you have, I considered so many reliable people to talk about it. When you have people at the Times who have been really, really great on football takeover things say one thing, and then you have Reuters say a different thing, and in the end, both of them are wrong, actually, because we're a month out, and Ineos wasn't selected as the preferred bidder, and Qatar wasn't selected as the preferred bidder, and nothing's happened since those major reports from 2 conflicting, very well-sourced things. You go, what's the problem here? The Glazers just haven't made up their mind. That's all it comes back to for me. And so that's kind of where I stay at it, and it's frustrating, and because it is like, I don't know what else more to say except to get heated over that, and so I try to push it out of my mind, like, whatever, we'll just try to enjoy the football. You have a lot of people at United who are, at this point in time, the people I mostly feel sympathetic before or empathetic before are not us as fans at this point in time, funnily enough, but the people at the football club, because there's a lot of people there right now working there who are good people who are trying to do their best for this club and for the fans and who have the best interests of the club and people like us at heart. And they don't know if they will have a job in 6 weeks. They don't know if they will have a job in 4 weeks. They're due for contract reviews. They're due for interviews for all the different things that are supposed to happen. It doesn't mean some business isn't happening as usual. Obviously it is. The football club has to run. It's still a public entity. They cannot not run the club, but there's a lot of stuff that's being held up for these people, and many of them are working with one hand tied behind their back. And I know from personal experience and some of the things I've been trying to coordinate with the club, as part of a community, that it's way not under control. Like decisions are having to be made way too close to when they should, instead of being planned out in ahead and having, a real good read on things, because they don't know if next week it's going to change. They don't know if the next day it's going to change. And it's a problem. And so I think that Murtaugh and co and all of them are doing really quite a good job keeping everything football-wise, doing what it should to the best of their abilities with the resources they have at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. What I was kind of reading into it, if it wasn't the 6 siblings and it was just one person, dynamic would be much easier. But there's certain ones who want to sell a certain thing, and they're kind of squabbling amongst each other. And I use the analogy: it's like vultures sat on a rock, and United are just kind of like a carcass, getting pecked at in that regard. So it's not great.
And what's the rush for them? Honest, like what's the rush for them? When you really look at it, what's the rush for them?
But I think that's so. Not obviously not you, but for them, it's so ignorant to ignore everything that's going on. I mean, it doesn't surprise me because we know what the Glazers are like.
They
never cared.
I
don't
even
understand. If you could argue, one of them does. Like Joe is involved in the day-to-day of United. He knows the rush. He knows the problem. But even if you wanted to try to give him the benefit of the doubt, there's still 5 more of them.
Yeah.
You know, they don't care. They're in different parts of the world. They're not connected to any of this. For them, there's no rush.
I don't get what else more possibly, because that 5th bid went in, what was it, like 5 weeks ago, 4 or 5 weeks ago? I just don't understand what they're doing now, like on a day-to-day. Are they emailing? Are they communicating? Like, what the fuck is happening? Because it's just, I don't understand it. I'm losing my mind. I'm scrolling like notifications. I know, Sam, you said yourself, you're like, I can't be asked. I'm done with this shit.
I give up with it now.
I am the opposite. I am like, every single update. What Matthew in bloody Birmingham said that, this is going to happen. And I'm like, give me something. Crying out loud.
I've been banned from a bunch of ITK Qatari accounts because I just keep calling them out and just being like, you're full of shit and you're lying, you know nothing. So I've been banned from them.
I think there's a lot of people who have been, haven't there? Like a lot of people have been jumping the gun. Saw Rio a couple of weeks ago jumping the gun. Nothing came out from that.
And then he kind of explained a couple, last week or something about, went back a little bit like, well, actually, Glazers siblings arguing and fussing and all of that. And it's like, but that's the difficulty of it, because it's like, who do you trust here? When it comes all from the Glazers, you could hear real good stuff that doesn't pan out.
Yeah,
you could hear it, and it just doesn't work out. So
Sam, should we dive into some questions? If we've got quick fire questions, if we can.
I put it in the chat before. Like, get your questions in for James. Obviously, if you're a real Reds Ultra, I'll get to you guys first. But if you got a good question, I will try and get to it. So drop them in the chat. Sorry, go on. From Tommy, is there any known alternatives to Rasmus Højlund that is being spoke of, because that price tag is ridiculous? That's from Tommy.
Good question. Give me 1 second. Sorry, I just want to answer because somebody sent me something, not inside, but there was an article, because we were just talking about the players, and I will answer that question. We were just talking about players in Saudi and things like that, and someone sent me a message that there's an article in the Daily Mail about them potentially targeting Alex Telles. So maybe
30 million.
You could have that could have out there 30 million. Yeah, let's see what we can do with this. But that would be one of the only options that could probably get all of his wages off. So it would be nice if that was the case. But so I mean, alternatives to Rasmus Højlund, that is a challenge, isn't it? Because we're already on our alternatives by the time we've ended up at Rasmus Højlund, aren't we? Harry Kane being the priority, not going to happen. Victor Osimhen, very high up on the list, not going to happen. Too expensive. You're down at Rasmus Højlund, Kolo Muani, who's priced as high as anybody else is, and that's been the problem all along. I've heard for months and months that he was going to be upwards of 80 to 100 million because they think he'll be worth that later. French
After
international, going to end up. He's going to be starting in that team, and his profile is only going to get bigger and bigger, and they're in no rush. I wouldn't pay that money right now for him anyway. Very risky, very, very risky. And so you're down to Højlund, and the only other solid name I know of is Gonçalo Ramos. But for whatever reason, when United are scouting the crap out of these Portuguese players, or these players that play in Portugal, for some reason we just can't seem to go there and get the deals done. Like Liverpool just go sign a bunch of players from Portugal, we can't get a deal done. Diogo Costa's been there. Obviously he's more expensive than this Onana deal, which is why Onana is happening. But there's very little that ended up going on in terms of actually going and getting him as a goalkeeper, even though he's been scouted all year. But Gonçalo Ramos, I mean, I think it's about price. If they really think that Rasmus Højlund's 100 million, then they're going to have to move to someone like Gonçalo Ramos and sell as much as they can to pay the money for him, And I think 70, 80 million euros could get that one done. I mentioned Balogun, who's now an American international from Arsenal, and they had interest in him when he was younger as well. He's trying to leave Arsenal, so it's probably coming from the other side a little more than United side at this point in time. But he scored 20 goals in League One in the French league last year, and he's only 40 million, probably 35, 40 million, something like that. You could do a lot worse. Carl Anka, the Athletic's been talking a lot about him because he actually really likes him. Thinks profile-wise is very, very similar to what United would be looking for. So I'd keep an eye on that one just in case, because you know they're not always that transparent with their targets, especially these days, United, and it's just one I keep an eye on.
Absolutely. It's from Wayne. Do you think if the season starts without a new ownership and Ten Hag wins for 5 matches, then the Glazers think they have more time and they can go on for another couple of months, maybe another season? Do you think that could be the case? That's from Wayne in the chat.
Yeah, well, this has been my fear all along, because here's the fact that people have to realize with the sale, and this will get into probably. I'll try to not go on and on about the whole thing with the takeover, but the Glazers need to sell if they want to do everything they need to do. Okay, with United, the stadium, all these other aspects, because nobody wants to give them money right now. And the interest rates are high. The loaning isn't the best at the moment. They don't have to sell because the club is insolvent, and that's what people have to understand here in terms of the comparison of pressure and things like that. Manchester United is not insolvent. It's actually had, as we saw, its record, income year. It's going to end up being this season, and that's without Champions League. Next year, it's going to be a record revenue year for Manchester United, really high, very, very healthy. And they could kick the can down the road. That's been a fear of mine all along. And a long time back, I mean, and it's crazy. It's months on from making this argument now, and they haven't made the point. As I said at the end of April, when Jim Ratcliffe's offer came up about keeping potentially 2 of the Glazers on as minority shareholders, I said to people at that time, you got to understand the problem here. They're not going to sell based on the offers that are on the table. They just won't sell. People said, no, they're going to sell. It's going to be over in a week. They'll sell to Qatar. If he didn't make that deal, they would have sold to Qatar at that 4-5 billion mark that was offered at the time. It's not true. They wouldn't have. That's the thing. They're stubborn and they want their money. If they're going to sell, they want their money. And so that's the concern of, and that's the concern of, 6 billion outright, right? And that was before things have gone on, and before the increase in revenue, and before the success that we're seeing now.
Yeah.
We don't know. We honestly do not know at this point in time if any amount of money, short of numbers that nobody's going to pay, will get Joel and Avram out of United. We don't know. We just don't know the fact of it, right? And so they could kick the can down the road. And that's why I've said it may be the only hope of United fans to get the Glazers out of control, that someone is willing to kind of sacrifice a bit and keep them on board as minority shareholders. It may be the only way, because it's not Jim or Qatar, it's Jim or Qatar or the Glazers staying. And you can't rule that out, or even dragging it out another 6 months or a year and hoping next year more American buyers come in, or somebody's willing to pay an extra premium. The Champions League, the thing people aren't, the next year, the 24-25, right? The new Champions League structure comes into place. That means more money. That means more TV revenue. It's basically the Super Champions League, right? The new structure. There's danger here in that if they don't go soon, it may actually get better for them overall in the long run. And I have worried about that. And that's why I'm just like, whatever deal gets them out of control. That's all that matters to me, because I can see the worry and I can see them sticking around. And it's like, what's another year of not fixing the stadium? Honestly, is it going to cave in? I don't think it will. I'm not saying this doesn't need to fix it, but
we've been, and it's leaky as fuck, and it looks horrible. So it won't surprise me.
But I'm sure they don't think another year is going to
they don't.
like.
They don't give a shit.
They don't give a shit.
From their perspective, is all I'm saying here, right?
Yeah. There's a couple. Sorry, Nick.
And I was just going to say, I'm of the exact same opinion. I said the other day, and everyone was like, what are you on about? I honestly, I don't think I either don't think they're going to sell it now, or I think it's going to be really postponed, like longer than people think. That's just my genuine opinion, but I tend to agree with that.
I still think they will, but like I've expressed in this, the concerns I have is it's not like it's off the table. The longer the delays is, nobody thought it would take till July.
Alternatives.
Nobody thought it would take this long, and it has.
Oh,
It's been 4 months longer than expected already. We should have known, end of March, then end of April. By Easter, it's going to be over, right?
Mate, I did a fucking video outside Old Trafford when I thought it was done, and I was like, finally, we're here, it's happening. I look back at that video, I'm like, you absolute idiot, what the fuck are you doing? Honestly.
I've managed to purchase a house, go through all the admin and all the stuff, and I'm probably gonna move into this house before they sell this fucking club. And I started it in like April this year, so it's fucking ridiculous.
Outrageous.
There's a couple of questions about Jonathan David. Is Jonathan David a target for United?
I'm not a fan.
That's a good question. Erik ten Hag tried to sign him for Ajax, and that's part of the reason why. I've mentioned his name before. He's not liked by United, people. Whether Erik ten Hag liked him for Ajax, he's not liked by United. Let's put it that way. Yeah. And I think he'd be expensive. I don't think he'd be a good signing. An incredibly inconsistent player for me.
Bad touch as well. They talk about the touch in the Premier League. He needs to be sharp and on it, and he's.
Yeah. I don't think they'll sign Jonathan David. I don't think he fits into the young and incredibly high potential or already established top player, and I don't think he's in either of those, and that's what they're going for.
Yeah,
I think questions wise, I can't see any more that we haven't already answered.
No, I think we've covered a lot of stuff there, to be fair, within the time limit. So absolutely fantastic. For everybody who's still currently watching, we appreciate a lot of you guys come over from James' channel, and appreciate every single one of you commenting and interacting. Please do leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. Big up the members as well. Make sure you check James' stuff out. Very insightful. Not all the shit that you see on Twitter, the ITKs and all this kind of stuff. Legit news that's concrete a lot of the times. So make sure you do go check that out for our little community that we've got developing. And yeah, thank you for coming on, James. Really appreciate you, as you already know, every time.
Yeah, anytime, of course. And I'm sure we'll talk more through preseason.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Sam also. Cheers, mate.
No worries. Go check us out on socials, please. They're on the right hand side there of me. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff, news, graphics, all the nice stuff. And if you're new, you want to consider joining the Real Reds Ultras, you get exclusive content. We've got an Onana video. As soon as he signs, it's getting dropped, it's edited, it's ready. So as soon as he signs, we will drop that. So if you want to see it and you want to be the only people to see it, please do join the Real Reds. It's about £4 a month. So it's less than a meal deal. It helps the channel out and you get exclusive content. And I'm making more emojis. Stop asking me. I'm making more. I will do it. Don't worry. Just bear with me. But we'll have content tomorrow. We'll have some content Saturday, Sunday. So stay with us every day.
Yeah, very, very busy with Manchester United at the moment. And I'm sure, James, you're going to be busy yourself. So we'll let you get going. And again, thank you as always. Hopefully we'll be speaking to you very shortly. Take care.
You too.
See you in a bit, guys.